Hey, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast number 22. Man, if you can follow us this long, thank you so much. If you're the first time watching, don't forget to subscribe and like. Appreciate all the viewers who got to this point. I do want to throw out there that we're getting tons of listens on Anchor and not as many on Spotify, which we could see some more. But we're getting some Apple Podcasts too, which is awesome.
Nice.
I had a couple of people from work talk about how good our podcasts were on Apple Podcasts, so I'm excited about that. But we're just killing it on Anchor right now. So if you're listening, tune in on audio to Anchor, Spotify, and podcasts. But if you want to see our ugly mugs, jump on YouTube because you
we probably let them stay on Anchor.
I don't mind. I mean. We're not bad looking for 45-year-old men. Getting close there.
Yeah. Are we?
We will be soon. Yeah, we're 44 this year, but we're getting there. So thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like and hit that notification bell. So many things happening in the world today. We're kind of back into this, let's just talk about current events, what's happening, whether it be sports or politics or, these ideologies and everything happening today. The first thing that I'd like to jump into is I really want to talk about this energy thing, right? So when you're talking about green energy, you're talking about solar, you're talking about electric, you're talking about wind. Now we already have had hydro, but maybe hydro with ocean water. When you think about that, Derek, what do you think about is it not that this should be our future? Like, what do you think is stopping this from happening? Like, why are we not going to these green energies?
Well, the simple thing is money. It's greed. It's like people making the money on other things don't want you to have it. Plus, like we in our house, we had someone come by looking for solar panels. And then when you price it all out, you're like, wait a minute, this isn't a good deal at all. So it's like, we want to go solar, we want to help out, but I'm like, it won't help us at all if we do. So it's like, no, we're not doing this.
So it's not good for you, right? So you got a government who is pushing green, because you think about at least who's in power right now. Like, they're definitely pushing this, green movement, which is outside of oil, petroleum. But yet, when you got to do it as an individual, it's going to cost you more money.
Right.
So why would you do that?
That's the problem, is they're talking how this is supposed to be all affordable and renewable energy, right? But then everything costs so much to do it. So it's like, well, where's the benefit?
So isn't that like the issue where it's like, hey, if you're going to push me or you're going to push us as a society into renewable green energy, stop, using oil, where's the benefit for us?
Right. Saving the planet.
Right. Because, in the 1,000 years later that the energy will affect us,
right.
It'll be our like kids, 10 times removed or 15 times removed. And so that's why I want to talk about this, because I think that's the issue. Like, if you're really going to push this type of energy, right? You want us to go electric, you want us to go wind and solar and hydro, like, make it better for us.
Right. And you make it affordable. It's like they've only seen the price of cars right now. And then to be like a hybrid or something, come on, man.
Or a Tesla. Like, try to buy a Tesla right now. Well, number one, it's crazy expensive, and you can't get one for 6 months.
Yeah. And then, and who knows, because you have to, if you work there, you got to drive there now. So you better have something that doesn't cost a lot of gas.
Well, and the worst thing is now you have these, like, you see it on, media, on talk shows and things like, I got a Tesla. And it's like, yeah, that's fine. You're a freaking millionaire.
Exactly.
I mean, just be honest, like I have a $30,000 car, but I can't afford an $80,000 car.
No. Especially they depreciate. Oh, well, maybe not now because of the way car price, but they will again
Yeah,
depreciate once you take them out the lot.
right. So, well, my question is like, how do you, let's pretend like you're in control. How do we transition out of oil into this different type of energy? So we got natural gas, we got oil. Those are the two things we basically run the world off of, right? How do we transition out of those without affecting the world economy? Number one, right? Because you're going to kill the world economy if you did it in a heartbeat. So how do we transition out of that?
Well, I think it has to be gradual, like you said. And the problem, like I was thinking, like wind power, you need lots of land for that.
Right.
And land is at a premium now because everyone wants a house. And if you look, like where I live, there are houses going up right next to each other, like boom, 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 trying to get as many in as possible. So it's so hard to find land. And then once you find the land, then you're destroying the environment to put on these wind turbines. So you're kind of, I mean, that's a problem with the wind, I get. And then I don't know too much about it. I guess in the Midwest would work, but it's because of
Well,
all the
you could, all the factories we've closed to put all the manufacturing overseas. There's a lot of room there.
yeah.
But that eventually, what you're right, that land though is going to come back to housing, right? So even though these empty spaces that we've emptied manufacturing plants, eventually they're going to fill up, and farmland filling up with. That's what they do. They buy a bunch of farmland and they put a development in there.
Yep, that's what they just did
yeah,
down the street.
you put 60 houses on those, 10 acres or whatever. So here's the issue that I have. It's like they're pushing, we got to be green, we got to be electric, we got to be wind, we got to be solar. But yet at the same time, it's like they're not thinking about like what that transition would happen to our economy or to the normal person like us who we can afford it, but that's going to put us more and more into that living to paycheck to paycheck.
It's
Yeah. So how does that transition happen?
I don't know, but it's just always funny to me that the people that are the richest are the ones telling us how to live our lives when they have no idea how it is. It's
Right.
like you have Leonardo DiCaprio telling us to stop with our carbon footprint while he's flying around on a private jet. I mean,
well, and when you talk about like the World Economic Forum, like this Klaus Schwab guy sitting up there talking about how he's gonna make the world green. It's like, dude, you're a billionaire, multi-billionaire. Like, what do you know about living? What do you know about buying groceries and not being able to pay for gas and living, every check to check? Didn't know anything about that.
yeah, groceries. I bought groceries over $200 this last week. I'm like,
it's out of control, but energy is the next thing that's going to become out of control.
Well, it already kind of is, like our water bill and stuff, and we hardly even use water, and it's still expensive. I mean, they tack on so many different fees and everything onto it. I'm like, oh, it's like we don't use water at all, and it's like $300 for 2 months.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm about 130 a month. Yeah, so it's about the same. So the real question there is like, how do we transition in a way that's not done by the rich, by the powerful, by the government, to where we could, because eventually we do need to go to a more green type of energy. Like we have to do it. And it's not just because of global warming, ozone depletion. The depletion of natural gas and petroleum from the earth will actually hurt the earth. Like the more we take out, the more that lava fills up into those pockets that we're pulling it out of and starts to heat the earth, and then you get an enhanced global warming. Not even talking about the ozone, right? You're talking about global warming from the bottom up, which melts the ice caps. So that's more of a thing than anything else. So we do need to be cognizant of that. But you can't just say, okay, we're done with natural gas and oil, because that also kills the economy. That when you start taking away that, you lose stock, you lose all the things that drive our economy.
Yeah, they need to have like a 10-year plan and gradually start taking things out. I mean,
Right.
you just can't, yeah. Like the whole thing, like we got to go electric within 2 years.
Yeah, you can't do that. And
car company,
you kind of have to compensate or incentivize the petroleum and the natural gas companies to move that way. We can't just leave them out in the cold, because first of all, they're not going to give up. They're not going to just be like, okay, fine, take away all our money. And at the same time, if we do take all their money, again, we hurt the economy in a very negative way.
mm-hmm.
So to me, this is one of the biggest challenges that I think we face as a country. There's so many things happening right now, and I think this is very overlooked when it becomes like a fight of green versus oil versus like, what should we be doing to actually make this a smooth transition? How can we compensate these oil companies to convince them to go to green? But we're not, right? We're really just like, we're funding companies like Tesla, to basically try to just take out these other manufacturers. So yeah,
And then it's becoming a monopoly, and will become a monopoly.
Right. By the time Ford and Chevy come around, they're not going to be able to compete with Tesla when it comes to the electric, car.
Yeah, they can't even compete right now. I don't even like,
Right.
when we were shopping for cars, like you didn't even look at Ford or Chevy for hybrids.
Yeah, and there's some hybrids and some fully electric cars. I mean, Volvo has some. There's a couple of our off-name companies, but those companies don't drive our economy. And I think so. When I think about this, and there's other things that tie to this, isn't it kind of like a short-sighted view to just think that we can just change it and we can not worry about those other companies? Because that's going to hurt, labor force. It's going to hurt economy. It's going to hurt stocks. It's going to hurt everything. And then we'll end up in this place where, yeah, we really pushed green energy, but at the same time, we drove prices up, inflation went up, and monopolies came about.
Right. Kind of like what's going on right now, right?
Right. So that one, to me, I think that's a big one that people should put more thought into this and understand that you can't just let the government tell you this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to do it. Like we need to be more involved in understanding it's not just a switch. You can't just flick a light switch of this energy. It's got to be a slow transition, and it has to be done smart. Otherwise, we're going to hurt ourselves.
Right. Well, and that's the issue we got coming too is whenever we change presidents, we don't want someone to just then flip away from it, because that's what we need, a gradual thing. But we can't have another president come in and go, I don't want to do this.
Right.
And then just
one president's pushing it super hard and the other that's like, let's slow it down. Yeah, you're going to have that.
Right.
And so let's talk about that. Let's just jump into State of the Union real quick. Let's talk about the differences in the parties. And what you just said is super important. They're so quick to like jump sides of what the previous party was doing, especially when we go a transition from, say, a Democratic Party control to a Republican Party control back to a Democratic control. They're really just like really hardcore trying to go opposite of what the previous party was doing. Right. Like, how does that affect us as a people?
It's a huge effect, because it's like we don't know where we're at. It's like, okay, so we're going to do these, we're going to sign these into law. 3 years later, oh no, we're not doing that. And then like 4 years later, no, we are doing that. There's no consistency at all to it. It's like what is it? Obamacare, came around, then Trump tried to get rid of it. Now Biden's like, oh no, it's good. Let's keep it. So it's kind of like no one knows what they're supposed to be doing.
Right. How do you think that affects the psyche of society and the American people?
Well, I feel like we've got this huge divide, and I think we've talked about this before. Now there is no middle. It's like they said, the death of the middle class. It's the death of middle politics. There is no, if you wanted to talk, anytime you talk anything where you might lean one way or the other, then someone's going to jump down your throat and say that you're a liberal, or you're, this, and you're a conservative, even if you're just talking about something logically or bringing up points. It's the whole now, if you're not with us, you're against us. It
Right.
doesn't matter if you just want to like bring up all the points.
Well, I think, yeah, for me, when you say if you're not with us, you're against us, I think that's the primal point, because you can't, like, if you go outside of your tribe these days, like, they're almost exiling you. Like, if you are on the Democratic Party and you agree with anything that a Republican says, they're putting you outside of the tribe.
Right.
And I think that's really bad for us. And I think it's gotten as bad I've probably ever seen it in the last 2 to 3 years.
Well, I think we've discussed it before. It was like my grandparents, one was a Republican, one was a Democrat, and they were married for over 50 years. Now you see on people's dating profiles, if you're this, I won't
Oh yeah.
talk to you. It's like,
Well, and it's called political polarization, right? So and that's what's happening right now. So how can we ever? So here's my question, and I know you may not be able to answer this, but how can we ever like progress as a country if we have this level of political polarization?
the only way we need to have a candidate that's not far on one side or the other. That's more like kind of like a Clinton was. Clinton was a Democrat, but he had a lot of Republican ideology.
Which is why they threw him out of office.
Yeah, I know, huh? Because he was a Democrat, but it's like, no, dude, he's actually doing stuff that you'd like. But yeah, and that's where the joke is. It's like someone like The Rock. I mean, right?
Well, when you're talking about, outside of like The Rock, or some of these things that we would love to see, which I'd love to see The Rock, but let's just talk about like the candidates that are coming up through these parties, right? Who's going to be elected as the top of the party to go run for president or whatever? Is it possible to now, in this day and age, find someone or have someone have the ability to come up and have those views? Like, I feel like you can't have that, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, because right now, like, it's very much like a reality world type thing where like you have to, like, it's the whole, you need to see me, I'm going to make a bunch of outlandish things and do this. It's like, what was it, DeSantis, Florida? Like, I'm going to fight Disney.
Like the most ridiculous guy ever, but the most popular Republican right now. Like, they're talking about, if Trump doesn't run, like, he's the guy.
Right. And he's, so far right. It just doesn't, and it's
No, like, yeah, he will. This guy literally will. It doesn't matter what the thing is. If it's not super Republican, conservative, far right, he's against it.
Right. And it's like ridiculous. It's like, so Disney didn't like one thing you did, so then you went after them completely, like
Right.
to just try to destroy them. And it's like, that's not someone I want in charge.
But you see all this everywhere for DeSantis 2024. You know, I'm not a Republican, and I still see this everywhere.
Yeah.
So how do we? So how do you then? How do we change that? Like, how do we get someone in the position to be in position of power when you've got, you know, the DeSantis coming up in the Republican Party, you got the AOCs, or, you know, the other Democrats who are maybe a little less
Kamala
progressive.
Harris will
You
probably
know,
be the,
you're right. It's like it's a lesser of two evils. Like either way, you're screwed.
yeah.
Like, how do we get someone in that middle though? From the point we're at right now, how can we possibly get a middle person in there?
Well, and that's what, just think about the last two elections. You had Hillary against Trump and you had Biden against Trump. I didn't want any of them.
Right.
It was like, there's no good choices. I was even like, oh, you know, I don't agree with Bernie Sanders, but at least he's kind of sane. And like, he might be able to work with people.
Yeah, but he's just so old.
He is, but
Just too old.
look at Biden and Trump.
Right.
That's a problem. We need to get some of the young up and comer, like 30 somethings.
So why is it? I was just talking about this the other day. Why is it that all of our presidents have to be so old? Why is there still even a law that says a president has to be a certain age?
Right. I was thinking about that too. It's like, why is I'm surprised people haven't been freaking out about 35 being when you could become president.
But when's the last time we had somebody near 35 as president?
Gosh, is Obama the youngest?
Since like JFK?
Yeah.
I mean,
well, was Nixon and JFK actually around the same age though?
Yeah. I mean, they're probably pretty close, but still, even that, they weren't still near 35.
No.
So you're saying, okay, you have to be 35 or older to be a president. First of all, stupid to have an age restriction, but second of all, we never have had that.
Right. Let's see. He was 61. I'm gonna do some math here.
So as you're looking at that, here's what I think. What I think is that the longer you've been in politics and the older you get, the more you get invested in these policies and the lobbyists and you know the corporations and the quote unquote the American way, which is not the American people way, it's the American corporate way.
Well, I've told people all the time when I talk politics, and I'm like, and then I was looking on it on IMDb, and it doesn't get good ratings, but The Distinguished Gentleman with Eddie Murphy, it's like, you look at that and you're like, oh, well, that's actually what happens.
Right.
It's literally what happens. It's like, oh, we're going to vote this way because they're giving us this. And JFK was 44.
And that's what I'm saying. I think he was the closest that I can remember, at least in modern time. I mean,
Well,
I could probably go back farther.
It would have to be in the 1800s, because in the 1900s it wasn't.
With nobody else, right? But if you were to talk movies and politics for a second, maybe people listening are not Star Wars fans, but I know you're Star Wars. You know, we're Star Wars guys. The first of all, the fact that when you watch the remake Star Wars 1, 2, and 3, not 4, 5, and 6, like the remakes, and just those, and you see the way that the Senate and the democracy works, and everybody's about, we want democracy, we want Senate, we want, you know, all this freedom and equalism, free trade, and then it starts to make the slow turn to where then that democracy then becomes the bad guy. and then that capitalism, free trade, or free trade then becomes the separatist and gets destroyed. Does that not feel like what we're going through right now?
Kind of. I mean, that's the thing is, yeah, the whole, yeah. Well, it's funny, like everyone's going in after Elon Musk for making everyone have to go to work. I look at it and I'm like, that's kind of a D-bag move. But I'm like, then I look at it and I'm like, well, it's his company, he can do whatever he wants. And that's free trade. It's like, you know what? It's his company. He owns it. He could do whatever he wants.
I don't look down on him for that. Like, again, yeah, that's your company. You own it. Like, that's what you want. Good. Right. That doesn't mean that's what's right for everybody.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, you know what? You're putting all this money into it. You get to make the rules as long as it's not like discrimination or anything like that. And it's, if you say, or, against any labor laws, then it's fine.
But doesn't it seem like we're in this circle of everything we're going to do for the greater good is going to end up in this, like, yeah, we were trying to do it because we want a democracy in the Senate to make these decisions. But then now you got stuff like COVID and war, and you got emergency powers,
Right.
And then all of a sudden that doesn't go away and you turn into this like republic, right? Like I really honestly, as I think about that, I feel like that's the way we're headed.
Yeah. I mean, are we going to go to like more like Starship Troopers then? Is that how it's going to be?
I almost feel like it's like old Roman times.
Yeah, that's good. I was thinking about that the other day, about how our society is leaning towards more Roman times, like socially and everything, like what we deem as acceptable now.
Right.
And how more laissez-faire we are with everything.
And it's going to go into this more of from a democracy to a republic, which then creates more control for the government into like this kind of ultimate power, and I know people hate this comparison, but it almost feels like that's what happens with, like, say, the Nazis or Napoleon Empire or Prussia or early Russia, or Ottoman Empire, I guess you'd call it. But those all feel kind of similar. So are we not on this like life cycle? Because you think about Roman, Ottoman Empire, Prussia, Napoleon, Germany, like, is that not like every couple hundred years?
Well, history does repeat itself. I've said this a bunch of times to people. I'm like, well, like they talking about when we still have the one police brutality, and I'm like, weren't you around in the early 80s or like the 70s? Like, it's not been around. And now you're like, we have COVID and now monkeypox.
Right.
And like monkeypox, it's reminding me of the early 80s, because everyone's coming out, or people on their agendas coming out and saying it's a gay disease.
Oh yeah, which is, it's not. I mean,
I know, but it's like, okay, now we're talking AIDS, like we're in the early 80s with AIDS. It's like, what? It's like it's like, am I living deja vu?
Yeah, like I've been here before. Yeah. I mean, but also even with COVID, now you're starting to see the re-spike, right? Washington State's talking about going back to indoor masks soon because of the increase in cases. Oregon is back to 16, 17, 1,800 cases a day and on the rise. And it's just like that. It keeps going up and down and up and down. And I don't know, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it makes you wonder, like, what's the government's involvement with this? If I had to, what if a conspiracy was that, the government put this out there for control?
The only problem I have with that, and I like the theory, but we've talked about it before, I believe, is the whole how are you going to get every single country to agree to this
But you don't have to.
and keep it quiet?
You don't have to if you just put it out there and it's going to spread. Because then everybody's going to do the same thing, right? When you have this like crazy new virus that nobody knows about and it's spreading, everybody's going to do the same thing. They're going to be like, oh, what do we need to do? We need to lock down. We need to do these things. But it doesn't mean that somebody couldn't have put that out there, right? Like chemical warfare testing, like, well, we're going to go to war with China in 10 years. Let's try out this virus, see how it works against them and see what happens,
And then we're like, oh, shoot, now it's spreading everywhere.
Yeah. Now it's around the world. We can't stop it, but let's just roll with it. But I mean, I don't think that's what happened. I'm just saying that's not impossible, right?
Right.
I really don't believe when it comes to government cover-ups that nothing is impossible. Like if you're going to tell me about, alien ships being in Area 51, like I'll get on board with that. Like I'm not going to say I agree with it, but I'm not going to be like, that's impossible. Yeah.
I think you're going to agree with it, Steve.
I mean, there's like, again, there's some things you can you can have a conversation with me and I'm not going to be like, you're stupid. Right. But there's some things that I just can't get on board with. But most things, if it's plausible and it has to do with the government and control and power, that's what they're about. Think about the dawn of time. Like how do you control people? Like how do you create civilization? The only way you do that is with power. Kings, right? Emperors, republics. That's how we've controlled the world for 6,000 years. So that's a tough one,
And that's the whole thing about Congress and the presidency and the Supreme Court. You don't want it all to be the same.
Yeah.
That's why you need a little opposition so you have checks and balances.
I think that was the idea, of the United States. And I think that was a good idea when they had it. And we've just drifted far away from that.
Well, I kind of think that the president shouldn't be appointing Supreme Court justices.
But why should we even have Supreme Court justices?
Well, it's checks and balances. It's to keep in you can't make laws that you shouldn't be making.
Well, that's what you're saying. Now I don't trust my leaders to make the laws. So we have to have another check and balance.
Yeah.
So why can't your Senate and your House make those laws? Because you can't trust them. So what do you got to do? Now
you can't.
A court.
That's why you have three branches. It's like they set it up that way so you didn't have one group just taking over and railroading everything.
Right. Yeah, and again, there's no perfect system. Like we've been doing this for 10,000 years and we've never found a perfect system. And to believe that somehow as a United States we have this perfect system, like it's crazy. Like we got to understand, we got to keep changing.
Well, most of this comes from 1776, right?
300 years ago, we still think we're right,
Yeah. Everyone's like still like up in arms about the Bill of Rights, right?
And the Constitution. Like, oh, that's our constitutional rights. You're like, that's something they wrote 300 years ago. That doesn't mean anything. Come on, dude.
Like, I have the right to bear arms. Yeah, you don't have a bunch of bears outside your window right now.
You did when there was English troops standing outside your door, but that's not the way it is anymore, and it's the Bible's the same way. You still got people living off the Bible. It's something that was a theoretical writing, thousands of years ago. So change management, that's the thing. It's like we don't have the ability to manage change, as a society, as a people. We got to understand that the world changed, people changed. We have to keep evolving, and we're really not doing that.
No, because that was another thing. I was listening to the Hamilton soundtrack, and I was thinking about this, and I'm like, oh, yeah, of course, Alexander Hamilton had all that time to write and everything. He had nothing else to do. There was no TV. There was no DVD, nothing like that. It's like as soon as you were by candlelight a lot of times, and
Right. I
yeah,
mean, you literally had nothing to do back then.
yeah, it's like what you had was books or reading. And that's why, that's what the problem is. Nowadays, everyone's like too busy not paying attention to anything. So they're like, attention span is just horrendous nowadays. So it's like, how many people even read books anymore? Now they have to have it on their Kindle or whatever.
They talk about, like, when you talk about social media, like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all these things, they're saying like 30 seconds is the most you have to capture someone's attention, especially in the younger group.
Mm-hmm.
So State of the Union in general, like, is there a fix? Like, what do we do? Like, how do we move past, how do we move forward from where we're at right now? Because I feel like we're at this really big crossroads.
Well, the problem is, and we just kind of went over it too, was everyone wants instant gratification, but it's a process. And if we actually had leaders come out and saying, okay, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, it's going to take some time, and not promise you the world right away, because then everyone gets even more disenchanted with it, because they're like, well, what you didn't didn't get solved right now.
Right. So here's the question I have for you. So Derek, you're the free leader of the world, of the United States. We don't call it the world because we don't want to pretend like the United States rules the world, even though we probably do. Like, what do you do right now? How do you fix? I mean, or is there even a problem? Like, do you need to fix it? Like, what's your next step?
Well, for like renewable energy, it would just, you'd have to put in a plan that implements things over like a 10-year period. Gradually move away, put subsidies on things, and hey, if you do this, then you get a little kickback, or you get this, because that's what people want. They don't want it to be where, here, just bend over and change because this is what we want.
Right.
So it'd be more like, yeah, like, hey, if you're able to put like solar panels on your house, well, you'll get this much off on your taxes and everything like that, and it'll get installed for free. You know what I mean? Stuff like that, because then with like the solar panels, it gives energy to other houses too. It's not just for your house. So if you're asking someone to put solar panels on their house, it's like, I'm giving you free energy to do this. You should pay for it, not have me pay for it.
What about the political landscape? Like, how do you fix that?
And you have to, like I said, we got to stop giving in to people that are radically one side or the other. And that's the issue, is because these people realize this is how my ticket is to get to presidency, is be radically left or radically right. We need to have more moderate people that can work together instead of all this adversary. It's just, that's the problem, is we got to stop trying to get people kicked out of office and actually start working together.
Do you think there's an issue with the people we're bringing in to, say, the House and the Senate, that they just have these agendas, then the agenda is not the people? Like, so, I mean, this is my thought, so I'm just wondering what you think on this, is that I really feel like people get into these positions because they're following a specific agenda, as opposed to really coming in. And there's probably a few of them that want to, like, do better, right? But I feel like maybe 80%, and that's just a guesstimation number, like, really just, they're just trying to follow an agenda so they can be there and be a part of that.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is you're supposed to be listening to your constituents. And a lot of these people, like, I get stuff from like Blumenauer or Wyden and stuff, and I'm like, I don't care about this. Has nothing to do with Oregon or anything to help us at all. Why are you on this platform to do this? You need to be helping us. And that's where I'm at. I feel like term limits, they need to have term limits.
Oh yeah. I mean,
I'm done with the career politician.
It's crazy to me that we don't, right? Is it not crazy that someone can be in there for 40 years?
Strom Thurmond. And he was around filibustering the women's right to vote,
Right.
And then he was still in.
Like 55 years later.
Yeah. The dude was coming in like they had to like bring him in on a wheelchair. He kept getting, let's see, how long was he in the Senate?
How do those people still get voted in, though? That's my question.
Yeah, he was 49 years.
Right. Yeah, so 50 years, that dude. How does he still get voted in, though?
Well, that's why I said watch The Distinguished Gentleman, because it goes right there, because people just vote for their incumbents. They don't pay attention. That's the issue, is the voters don't really pay attention anymore.
So let's talk about voting for a second, okay? Because if there is another conspiracy theory that I will buy into, even though I don't necessarily believe into it, you can almost get me on that conspiracy theory of like our votes don't matter, like they're just putting in whatever votes they want.
Well, and technically, the Electoral College, our votes don't matter anyway, because they can overrule them anyway with whatever they want.
Right, but still the votes get to the number to the Electoral College to give them the points, though, right? So you still got to have the votes to win the Electoral College.
But that's just then, because the whole thing is your senators and House representatives vote for you.
Right.
They don't, but they could just be like, nah, I'm not doing that, and I'm voting for the other person.
But they still have to be voted in, though, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right.
It is. So let's say, you have your senator from Oregon, but that was voted in. But how do we really know that he got the votes or she got the votes?
Right.
So I'm kind of could buy into that conspiracy theory, because there's no one there like counting the votes, right? Nobody's like 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
The whole thing, the conspiracy is JFK had a bunch of dead people vote for him.
Right. Well, and that's been going on for hundreds of years, though.
Yeah.
And I don't. Again, that's one thing you can convince me. Like, we're not really voting people in.
Right. But let's just agree that Trump didn't get. They didn't steal Trump's votes.
Well, regardless, I mean, so my thought process in there is I don't really care. I think we're screwed either way.
Right.
But at the same time, again, you could convince me that one or the other, whether it was 2016 Trump or 2020 Biden, that either of them could have been falsely elected. You can convince me of that either way. Not convince me, but at least make an argument for it, right? And I won't like shut you down. Like, there's certain things when you bring conspiracy theories to me, I'm like, boom, done. Flat Earth? No, get the hell out of here. Like, that's not the kind of conspiracy I'm talking about. But
what? Kyrie's wrong?
But you know what I'm saying, though? It's like, because there's nobody counting the votes. Like, you don't know.
Right.
Like, if you give me 100 votes and you're like, Steve, count these. And I'm like, oh, this guy won. And you're like, oh, cool. Thanks for counting them. Like, you don't know what I counted.
Right. Well, don't they put him into a machine, though?
Right. Again, let's talk about machines, let's talk about computers. And that's the problem. It's like, you either believe it or you don't, right? And so do we really know that the people we voted in were the people we voted in? We don't, right? So it's a belief. You just got to trust it. And
Well, we need term limits.
that's what I'm saying. Sometimes when I think about that, it's like, how could this dude get, 10 times voted in or 20 times voted in? Like, it's just really unrealistic to me.
Well, and I think about like ours right now, and I'm like, has Oregon really improved under your care that much? Why are we continuing to vote you in?
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe you're not, and that's why that conspiracy almost, because you're really not doing any good, like you're really not helping. Like and are people really that, I almost say dumb, but maybe there's not a better word, that they're just like, sure, go ahead, keep screwing us.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, bring it again, distinguished gentleman. The whole thing is he has the same name as the incumbent,
Right.
and the incumbent dies, but he puts his name on the ballot. And so they're all like, who do we vote for usually? Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that could happen nowadays.
Maybe it is.
What was it? Wasn't Dennis Hoff? Didn't he get elected and then he was dead?
Yeah. And maybe it is that people are just that, I mean, I don't know if you say ignorant or stupid or just biased or just brain dead, that's just what they do.
Well, a lot of people just party line. That's the whole
Right.
thing with like Trump. They're like some of the stuff, because if you think about the Republican Party and stuff, and you have the like ultra conservatives and all that, but it's like they're voting for Trump, and it's like Trump's not
qualified at all.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't think he's believing in God too much or going away from any of these vices here.
Yeah, and he's just a Republican though.
Yeah. Well, so it's like that's where we'll vote for him.
The same thing why people voted for Biden.
Yeah.
Because he was the Democrat and they just didn't want Trump.
Yep. That's the thing is the whole, I'll vote for Biden because he's not Trump.
Right. It's just crazy. Like, how are we living in this world?
It's been a long time since we've had, well, I guess just since Obama left office, it's been pretty slim pickings, horrible. Like, because I looked at like when Obama was running, what you had Romney. I could see Romney as
maybe. I mean, I don't think it was a challenge. Like, Obama was the obvious choice.
Yeah, but I mean, put Romney up against the last four people.
Right. You probably go Romney. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
I mean, I wouldn't look at, I know if we're going to go old, but think about like when Bob Dole, if he was still around, would have beat these four people.
Right. Well, Ross Perot, like,
yeah,
he might have came on as an independent one.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we need. Maybe we need a good, crazy independent,
Rock as an independent. He's already got his TV show about him running for president.
That's so funny. So I guess the wrap up there is that the political portion is that like we're just a shithole. Like it just sucks right now.
Yep.
And I don't know. Like I would love to say that I know how to fix it, but I don't think there is any fixing it. Like we're literally gonna come into that like Star Wars Episode 3, like Republic, Galactic Empire, right? Like the US is gonna be this world empire and say it's for the greater good.
Well, but then it's going to be revealed that it's Trump and Biden working together.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like, and then we're like, oh my God, we all just got screwed over. Like, I don't not think that's going to happen. I'll just be honest with you. I think we're all going to end up in like, and we'll probably be dead by then, but it's going to come back and be like, wow, we just like screwed you all over. So that's
or it'll end up like Idiocracy.
Wow. That's another possibility. I don't know. I think the latter of what we talked about is more likely, but it doesn't think, I don't think that we can't be talking about Brondo and electrolytes. So let's talk about, we got a few minutes left. So let's talk about the Depp and Amber Heard trial, because we got a verdict. And this is a defamation suit, right? And so Amber Heard, ultimately it's about 10 million or so dollars that she's got to pay, minus like the what he owes her.
Well, it was 15 million, but 5 of the million was punitive damages.
And then the judge, yeah, she marked it down to like
300,000.
Right.
And then Heard won for 2 million.
2 million, right. So yeah. But regardless of the money involved in this, so here's the issue that I have with this, because there's a lot of Amber Heard haters out there. Like if you're going on social media, anywhere you look, it's like Amber Heard is the bad guy. But then you have a few who are talking about how it's like now they're minimizing the fact that, the abuse of women, because he won a defamation trial, even though he may have abused her.
Well, it's a hard one because, the problem was she's not a very likable person at all.
Oh, she did a shitty job in the trial. Terrible job.
And, like they had like the Instagram posts from each of them talking about the trial, and they showed like the list of celebrities for each, and Depp had like 60, 70 of them, and Heard had 3.
Right.
And I think it just, the problem was she just didn't seem very truthful at all.
Right.
And it really hurt, because it's hard to say, but it's like we've had the Me Too movement come in, and in most cases it's been right on. You're like, well, Kevin Spacey has just got accused for 3 more people. Deshaun Watson has 1 more came out.
Harvey
Weinstein,
right?
Bill Cosby. So it's done a great job of getting some of these predators out. But then there's this. And do I think Johnny Depp is an angel? No, not at the least. But it wasn't like Amber Heard was an angel either.
Right.
And that's how she portrayed herself. And I think that's where everything went, was like, no, you're just as crazy as him.
So do you think that like, so outside of the actual, maybe the physical abuse happened between them, because she went out and said, this has happened to me and I had nothing to do with it, and then a defamation suit comes from that, does that like degrade from the fact that she probably was abused?
I kind of feel like it is, because I'm not trying to look at this as a man and a woman abuse. I look at it as a toxic, horrible relationship where they were both horrible people to each other.
Right.
And when I look at it, I look at the dynamic is they were both just not good at all. I mean, Johnny Depp was drinking probably all the time. And
of course, like especially for the last 10 years.
Well, the thing is also, though, like you think about in these other cases like Kevin Spacey, Weinstein, Deshaun Watson, normally when this happens, then out of the woodwork, a bunch of people come out and say the same thing.
Right.
But most of Johnny Depp, like defended him.
Right. Well, the worst part for her was the people that she said would be on her side came out on his side.
Right.
Like there was probably, I would say 60, 70% of her witnesses actually were opposite of what she hoped they would be.
Right.
And like 80-90% of his witnesses were on his side.
Yeah, because I watched the verdict, and it was like every single question that they asked the jury about Johnny Depp was yes,
Right.
like for him to win. And then for Heard's part, her countersuit, every single question except one was no.
Right.
So she only got one question out of all that, right? She got 2 million out of it, but it was pretty much like a landslide for him.
So I guess the question is, because this is a defamation suit, which I don't think a lot of people understand. Like they think it's like an abuse suit.
No, it's like a civil. It's like just
Yeah.
money.
But most people are under the thought process of that because Johnny wins the defamation suit that he was not guilty of abuse,
Right.
which I don't think is true. Like,
Well,
yes, she probably was guilty of just as much abuse as he was, but that doesn't mean he was not a guilty the same way, right?
yeah, but then you can go either way. Was like you look at there are women that are abusive to men.
Yeah, no, and that's what I'm saying. She was probably equally, maybe more,
Right.
maybe more. Like, I don't know, but all I know is that he, based on everything that I heard through this trial, that there was plenty of times where what he did can be considered abuse.
Right.
And so, yes, this is a defamation trial, which again, I think people have a hard time separating those two things. Understanding that what he's suing for is defamation of character, not the fact that they were both abusive to each other.
Well, and then I kind of feel like that the whole thing is what happened is because she tried to come out and feel like she was an angel and everything. And that's why everyone was like, no.
Right. And I think that was her mistake, is she should have just been truthful. She should have just came out and said, look, we were both abusive to each other. I'm just as guilty as he is. That's what she should have done. That
I think once they got the evidence, the part about her shitting on the bed, it was over. It's like, no, there's no angel here.
Yeah. But again, what you're saying is that like she kept trying to like pretend like she was not guilty of anything. And
Right.
it's like if you come out and you're honest, and you say, look, I'm no angel, he's no angel, we were both no angels, so defamation is not valid here because we were both fucked up, or
Right.
We both like really messed with each other. She probably would have won that case.
Yeah, she had horrible counsel.
Right. Oh, her counsel was terrible. Worst counsel I've ever seen. Like when you object to yourself on a question, like you got problems. That was crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, and that's the thing is too, it's like Johnny Depp is a really good actor, and he kept his composure so well on the stand. And he made himself engaging, and he was just out there like, and then like when she'd ask him questions and he'd undermine her completely.
Well, he was playing the part, she was playing a part that wasn't real. He was playing himself. Like he was just like, this is how it is. I'm just going to tell you like it is. And some of the times he sounded a little bit incriminating to me, but it wasn't incriminating enough to be like, hey, this is the bad guy, right? He very much felt like equal parts in it.
Yeah, it was. You looked at it and you're like, oh, poor Johnny Depp. He's just a drunk.
Right. Well,
he's Jack Sparrow.
Well, but at the same time, it felt like, hey, dude, you're just as responsible. That's the way I felt. But I think Amber Heard, like what you're saying, almost would push me away from that. Like you didn't do any wrong. Like when you come tell me like you're an angel and he's over there saying it was equal, I'm going to believe that, it's just an interesting theory. Or when you talk about this whole thing, it's another like something that's keeping our attention away from world affairs. Ukraine, China, world economy, the decline of the world dollar, of the American dollar, like all this stuff, and all we're talking
gas
about
prices.
And we just like are so focused on this. So that's what drives me crazy about this. But I think it was I think it's an important part. But what I don't want to be lost in this situation, and I've seen this already, and it really upsets me that there are people who are taking that train of, see, women are always lying.
Yeah, that's stupid.
And I don't believe that. But you see that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that. Like this one woman, and she's not even lying. She's just trying to make herself look better than she was. But she was definitely abused.
Right.
As much as he was definitely abused too. Like they were both abusing each other.
Hey, she cut his finger off.
But then to then like say that now women are lying about this, like that's what bothers me. Because most women are abused, it's a fact.
That's the whole thing is, you got to take into account, there's always going to be a red herring or
one out of 100, right?
Yeah. One of the dentists doesn't pick this, 4 out of 5.
Yeah, doesn't like the enamel protection toothpaste. I get it. But and I think that people are trying to like over exaggerate that with her though.
Right.
And I've seen that a lot, and that upsets me because the reality is there's so many men out there abusing women, and it's worse, one of the worst things that happens in our country or in the world.
Well, and this also shows how popular Johnny Depp is.
Yeah.
Because everyone can be like, I could let Johnny Depp slide.
So many people, right, are on that train because it's like, just because it's Johnny Depp, they're like, he could never do that. It's like, no, he's a person. He could absolutely do that. So there's a lot of things that upsets me about this.
Well, we've all been drunk and we don't do things that we normally do. And if you're drunk all the time,
you're gonna do a lot of things you don't normally do, right? And I mean, especially when, and again, I don't blame Amber Heard as much, solely, but when there's some level of reciprocation of it's enhanced, right? So if he's already drunk all the time and then she's like poking the bear,
right,
you're gonna get clawed. But at the same time, you can't claw a woman, right?
Exactly.
So
no one should claw anybody,
right? But especially, and I know like there's this movement for equality and everything like that, but I don't care. I'm still under the belief that a man should never put his hands on a woman, regardless. Like you can hit me, you can slap me, you can punch me and kick me in the balls. Just never gonna happen.
What if they're trying to get to your daughter?
Again, now you're putting a what's that called?
You said there was never gonna happen.
Well, that's what I'm talking. When there's two of us, right? Now you're putting a third element. You're gonna put an extra element in there now where it's different. I'm just saying when it's me and you. Right. But when you start putting the third element in there, we're gonna have an issue. But so I'm just that way. Like I've always been that way. So that it's just interesting to me that the following and the hatred for Amber Heard that I've seen, even though I definitely think she was a victim of abuse, 100%.
But it all comes down to, and it's the same thing with any of these people that like Roseanne or whatever that say something stupid or whatever. Just come clean.
Right.
Don't try to hide, and just, what? If you come clean and do some damage control, you disappear, then you can come back and have a career.
That's what I think her mistake was in this whole trial. Her mistake was just not saying, hey, you know what? Yes, I was just as abusive as him. And you know how that comes off to the jury? Equal abuse.
Yeah.
No defamation because you both did it.
There was abuse. Yes.
Right. Like that's why she messed up, because she tried to take the high ground.
Well, maybe they are listening to this for their appeal, and
That's
they
right.
might be able to figure this out.
Judge from Virginia, I'm sure you're listening. One of our 25 listeners. Okay, so let's wrap up with NBA Finals. Game 1, Golden State, Celtics. Probably the most exciting finals series to me that we've had in, I don't know, 10 years.
Yep. Who needs LeBron, right?
Yeah. I mean, game 1, Golden State takes the lead. Steph goes off. The Celtics just persevere, fight through it, and win the game. Like, what happens? Who wins the series? What do you think?
Well, the Celtics already stole my thunder because I was going to come in and, go Celtics in 7. And everyone's going to be like, oh, they won game 1. But I've been on the Celtics train. I said they'd make it to the finals. And it's because we use that word. They're scrappy. Their defense. They play amazing defense and they have scorers. They have interchangeable parts. Like today, it was Horford. Tatum had a horrible game. Horford hit 6 3-pointers.
Right.
Tomorrow, in the next game, it could be Tatum. It could be Brown. It could be Smart.
Right.
Williams. I just, not to take anything away from Golden State because they're amazing too.
Well, you said Golden State was going to win, though. The championship.
Did I?
You did. You picked Golden State.
Oh.
But so now you're saying the Celtics?
Yeah, I was thinking this because you can't. Look what they've gone through already. They went through the Nets. They went to the 76ers. And then they went through the Heat.
Which,
or did they do the 76ers?
Yeah,
was it?
Yeah, before.
Or no, were they the Bucks? They went through the
They
Bucks.
went through the Bucks. Before we moved past the Heat, did you see the replay of the Heat 3-pointer where they reviewed it when his foot was on the line?
Foot?
Yeah.
No.
And they reviewed it and still disallowed it, even though his foot was not on the line after a review, which changed the game.
NBA conspiracy theories, because you want that Boston TV market,
but like, why do we have reviews if you can't
if it doesn't
right?
work?
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with the NFL. It's like, why can't we review everything, and why isn't this one play not reviewable, even though that cost the game?
Yeah, because I feel like that the Heat lost. I mean, they probably you don't know how the game would have ended up, but that would have put them with one point.
Right.
It would have been a different game, right?
Well, so with the Celtics, what's going to happen is everyone's going to be riding high on them now because they won. Then they're going to lay an egg.
Right.
And then they're going to win. And they're going to lay an egg again.
So 2-2.
It will be like, it will go down to game 7. And then they'll decide to play hard again. It's just how they've done it. That's how they've done the whole playoffs, except destroying the Nets. That dysfunction.
I mean, Clay played bad. Jordan Poole played bad. Draymond Green played bad. Clay played average. Steph played good for 3 quarters. I mean, don't you think if like Golden State puts that together for 4 games in a row, they can't just go 4-1?
I don't think you could put it together for 4 games in a row because of Boston's defense, their defensive intensity. They're not going to. That's where Boston always stays in games.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I think I could see next game Warriors winning by 30.
Right. Which makes you think that they could kill them, but then they come back and they lose.
Yeah. But think about that. That's what they were doing to the Grizzlies too. And then the Grizzlies annihilate them in one game.
Oh, yeah.
Without Jaw.
Yeah, by like 20, 25, 29 or something like that.
I just think the Warriors are too inconsistent.
Right. Even though you picked them to win the championship.
I know. But that was before the whole series, and I haven't watched it. I just don't feel Clay is back to normal yet.
Yeah.
And you got Steph, but then you're relying on Jordan Poole. and Andrew Wiggins, who are still. This is the NBA Finals, so
I think the Celtics matchup physically better than any other team in the league does against Golden State. When you look at Golden State, they're moving a lot. You know, they're not big, they're not strong, but they're fast and they're quick and they're running good offense. Where I think the Celtics are the one team in the league that can keep up with them. So it really comes down to their shooting. Like, can they shoot consistently to score as much? They got to score 115 to 120 a game. You got to do it.
even with a good defense, that's what's
you
funny.
still got to do it. That's the sad part about playing Golden State. If you don't score more than that, like, they're going to outscore you. So
Like the old adage of Iguodala winning MVP that 1 year for holding LeBron to like 25 points.
right. But I mean, you remember the old Nuggets, right? Like, run and gun. Like, they're scoring 140 points a game. I mean, you could be good, but unless you could keep up with them,
Right.
they're going to let you score and they're going to go off for 140. And if you couldn't score 150, like, you were going to win. I feel like,
you know, the coach of those Nuggets, the coach of that Nuggets team was the one with the Showtime, their first Showtime championship, Paul Westhead.
Right. But I mean, I mean, Golden State's maybe not that bad when you come to that, but I think they're similar to that. Like, they're not great defense. Like, Looney's decent, Draymond overrated, Clay can play some defense. But
Well, Clay will. I just don't think he's fully 100% yet. Still,
right. So he's still not the lockdown defender he could be.
Right.
So what it really comes down to me is, can Boston score? If Boston can score 110 a game, 120 a game, they win. If they don't, they're going to lose. Like, because Golden State's going to score that much.
Yeah. Unless, Boston turns it into 90s Eastern Conference basketball.
That doesn't exist.
Yeah. Did you see the scores in the Eastern Conference final? The Miami and the Celtics?
Yeah, I mean, but
they're under 100.
It wasn't because of the physical play. It's because they were just fucking trash at shooting. But, I think this is a great series, I love to see this. I'm excited for this. Is the first time I've been excited for an NBA Finals in a long time. And I hate to say this, but I'm happy that there's no LeBron. And there's just two teams that built themselves.
Huh?
There's just two teams that built them teams, right?
Yeah.
They didn't buy a bunch of free agents. They didn't build super teams like their draft picks. Like, it's just good to see. It's almost like the Patriots, even though I hate the Patriots, but they kind of just built the team, right?
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that was the cool thing about the playoffs and how wonderful it was, is most of the teams just were built teams.
Right.
They weren't like, I'm whining and I want to be traded to a super team. Because they talk about that, but I'm like, no one wants to deal with that. It's like, look, James Harden's whined a few times now to get traded. What has he done? Nothing.
So, last thing about NBA, Kevin Durant leaving the Nets. He's going to a Western Conference team. Where's he going?
This is just where we're just making up a story where he's going to go.
No, he's literally, he's already said he's leaving the Nets.
What?
He's going to a Western powerhouse.
You said Western powerhouse?
Yep.
I'm going to say the Suns.
Suns? I think it's Suns or Dallas. I think he goes to the Suns or Dallas.
Yeah.
And can you imagine Luka and Durant?
That'd be crazy.
So, I mean, NBA Finals going to be great. Again, like, I haven't liked the NBA in years. It's the first playoffs I've really enjoyed watching. So now we got NFL, we got March Madness, and we got the NBA playoffs that all have been like great this year. Like,
it's been very good for sports.
What is happening?
It's lots of parity, I think.
man, it's crazy. It is a great year for sports. I almost feel like sports is coming back. Like it's
Yeah. There's also, I mean, I know not your thing, but right now about 8 teams are on pace for 100 wins in baseball.
well, when it comes playoff time, we'll be watching. Like until October, I don't care. But I mean, I do enjoy playoff baseball and World Series baseball. I do enjoy that. Okay, so wrap it up. Final thoughts.
And it's just another crazy week. My wife's a teacher, and they had a shooting threat TikTok thing. That the guy that someone was going to come to the school today and stuff. So most of the school didn't come to school today. Most of the kids stayed at home. And yeah, that's kind of the world we live in now, where people can just make up fake stuff to scare people.
Right. Yeah, they had a lockdown at our other elementary school out here. It wasn't Brooklyn's, luckily, but a suspicious adult making a threat. And yeah, it's just a sad world we live in, where we got to worry about our kids at school or people at the mall.
Yeah.
Or
hospital
or hospitals, or yeah, and that's, and I mean, I think that's a great point you make, where we didn't talk about guns and mass shootings and things like that, but we just live in a horrible country for it. And if we can't like come together and think about that as a group, like we're doing something wrong. So yeah, that's a good final thought. And my last final thing, we talk about the country and the State of the Union. We can't just keep fighting against each other. At some point, we have to come together. It doesn't have to be with your party. It doesn't have to be a Republican. It doesn't have to be Democrat. But as a people, we have to realize that if we don't come together, they'll tear us apart.
And you know what? If you're talking to someone who you don't agree with, and you're at war with words, you know what? Here's the thing. Just listen and politely disagree. You don't need to go off and say, "Oh, you're stupid. You don't know what you're talking about."
Or try to understand what they're saying. Try to listen.
Yeah, listen. People, that's like one of the worst things that people do nowadays is listen.
Yeah. Or just try to understand where they're coming from. Even if you don't believe in it, like just listen, hear what they have to say. And it's just terrible world we live in right now. And I know, like, we think we live in the best country in the world, but we're just as bad as everybody else out there.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. We're on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts. Check us out. If you have questions, hit us in comments. If you want to hear a certain topic, love to talk about it. Put in the comments. We need some great topic ideas. We'll definitely hit current events, but anything you guys want to hear, love to hear it. Big Box Steve. Big Smooth. We'll see you next time.
All right.